I guess I'm proud of the fact that no baseball players have attacked me with a bat yet.
The fans are fans of baseball as much as they are fans for their team. My main battles have mainly been against the North American press. Oh yeah, and there's this weird guy who thinks Japan actually has a chance of winning at the very end of the article. That's what he wrote.
I love Sadaharu, but boy, don't put him in near any big games.
Speaking of food, this podcast is sponsored by Takorea in Daejeon for the finest in Mexican food in all of Korea. It's Takorea 0422421600. You guys like Mexican food?
I love it.
All right, next time you come to Korea, Mexican food on me at Takorea.
Hey.
Here. Okay. We're all here. I think we're all here.
All right.
Let me get my questions out.
We don't get the script?
I want this to be natural. Hey everyone, welcome to the ComingToAmericaBaseball.com podcast. We're here in Tokyo today with two very special guests. First, to my left, Jim Allen, and to my right, Michael Westbay. Who are these guys? They're the godfathers of Japanese baseball in English.
Wow.
That's an interesting.
Do I get to make you an offer you can't refuse?
Well, I am Italian, so I do the negotiating.
Oh, wow.
Well,
we're not too far from Tsukiji Fish Market, so if anybody needs some sleeping, we'll know where to go.
Yeah, your partner, John Gibson, is not in the best graces with some of my Italian family back in New York. One Nino, Mike Ninivaggi, who he's had words with on my podcast, and is coming to the Pacific Rim in 2015. I have T-shirts for you guys afterwards promoting that tour.
Was John doing his New York impression?
No, he was just. They got into disagreements. Healthy baseball conversation.
Oh,
yeah,
well, that's that. Well, gee, like John and I never do that.
You two sound like an old husband and wife on the podcast.
Yeah, we're the Bickersons.
I love your podcast. Give you background about Jim. He is one of the co-hosts of Japan Baseball Weekly podcast, along with John Gibson, also with Kyoto News.
Yep.
And you've been writing about baseball here since the mid-90s?
Early 90s.
Early
I think.
90s.
It's been 20 years now.
He wrote Jim Allen's Guide to Japanese Baseball, which is how I discovered Jim. I was going through the Usenet forums on San Francisco Giants, and under Jim's name was his place of work, Jim Allen's Guide to Japanese Baseball. And I emailed him and said, "Is this a joke or is this real?" And his answer was, "Well, I'm sure hoping that it's real."
Yeah, it wasn't real. It wasn't real. It was real work, but it wasn't real money.
You write for Kyoto News.
I do.
Unfortunately, no bylines with your name. But
Very few, yeah.
But tell us about Kyoto, and it's like basically the AP of Japan.
Yeah, Kyoto is the Japan's national press agency. It's partly owned by it's subsidized somewhat by the government, and basically our business is 90% in Japanese, 99% in Japanese. I work in the international department and the overseas section for the English sports desk, and basically we look for news in the Japanese side that will translate into English, as well as going out and covering stories, especially overseas oriented Japanese stories.
And you guys also worked on JapanBaseball.com together, and Michael, you created that. And you're also part of ScoutDragon.com.
Yeah, a scouting website for major league teams.
And how's that going?
Well, we've got several teams signed up, and it really does help the scouts in preparing their trips to Japan. Many of them just swear by it because what it does is it gives them an idea of where they want to go before they get here. A lot of them can basically hit the ground and go straight to where they need to be, scout the people they want to see, and go back. So it saves, you know, MLB teams money and travel expenses, and in not going to places where there really isn't much to see as well. So it's as much about preparing the scouts who are coming to Japan as it is scouting from afar as well.
Everybody's got their story on how they fell in love with Yakkyu, or Japanese baseball. For me, it was in 2002 at Koshien. I saw the Tigers and the Giants play. That was the year that Matsui, Hideki Matsui, the Yankee great and Giant great, was rumored to come over the next year, and Godzilla broke the game open in the 8th with a double. But anyhow, it was the thunder sticks, it was the fans, it was the girls with the kegs of beer on their back, it was the balloons, it was the no grass in the infield. It was all that won me over. How about you, Jim?
Gee, I guess it started from afar, from an analytical perspective, in that I realized it's a long story, and to make it short, I looked at the Japanese sports papers, and I saw I was an early convert to sabermetrics when I was in university, early 80s. And when I got here, I noticed the difference between the U.S. box score and the essentially the score sheet you get in the Japanese newspapers. And I thought, this is a wealth of information. This is what people in America are dying for, giving arms and legs for, to get this kind of data. And so I started gravitating and seeing, what's the difference? What's going on in Japanese baseball? How is it the same? How is it different? And in the process, I learned the players' names, I learned about the teams, I learned about the backstories, and the rest is more or less history.
Now, did you study Japanese in the States?
Yeah.
Did you come over with a good grasp of the language?
Some people will tell you I still do not have a good grasp of the language. It depends on how tight you want that grip to be. But
you're able to conduct interviews with Japanese players?
Yeah, to some degree.
Without a translator?
Sure, to some degree. And I can't write in Japanese. I can barely scribble in Japanese. I can read a fair amount. I can speak, and I can hear a fair amount. But I did study before I came. It took several years. I'm not very good at foreign languages. It took a few years to get used to the language. But Michael's one of the people who are very adept at Japanese through dint of hard effort.
Michael, was it love at first sight with Japanese baseball for you?
Yes, most definitely. I was actually in high school at the time. My dad worked at Yokosuka Navy Base, and we went to Yokohama Stadium one game against the Carp, and we actually sat on the Carp side. We were supposed to sit on the Yokohama side, but the Carp fans took us in. They they gave us food and taught us the songs. I still remember chanting Katobase Maeda and all kinds of things, and it was just such a whirlwind of impressions, and it's so hard to remember anything in particular, yet everything was so overwhelming. And I don't remember the outcome of the game, but it was just an incredible experience. And I loved baseball long before I came to Japan, so it just was a natural fit for me.
Do you ever feel like, either of you guys, you're sitting at the game and there's these drums banging and these horns going and the fans are on their feet most of the game? Do you ever want to just turn it off and hear the crickets like you're in Milwaukee in the middle of July?
Well, I lost my voice basically because of Japanese baseball. trying to just, you go to the ball game in America with friends and you spend the time watching the game and talking with your friends.
Right.
You try to talk to your friends in a Japanese game and you lose your voice.
Yeah.
I mean, it is permanently damaged.
Not because you were cheering.
No, but I used to be able, I used to have right fielders at Candlestick Park who dropped the ball for the visiting team could hear me.
Right.
And now I can't do that more than once a game. And I'd be sitting way back in the reserve seats.
Yeah, when I was younger, participating and singing and learning the songs was all a lot of fun. But as you get a little older, you start moving a little more toward the infield seats where it's a little more comfortable and you kind of can have a bit of a conversation with people. It's not, as Jim says, it's not that easy, but it's certainly possible. Enjoy the game, enjoy the sounds and sights of the crowd. But that's more, I think, age than I still appreciate the crowd. I still appreciate the songs and everything. But it's good at a slightly more distance. But yeah, watching American games on TV, it does sound like crickets. It's just, and that sounds alien to me now. It just doesn't sound right.
I've met guys who pitch in Korea, and it's similar over there. Yeah. And they said they don't want to go back and play MLB.
Right.
It's just too exciting, and it gets them amped up.
You get hyped up, and I can feel the adrenaline coming from the fans onto the field. Yeah.
But do you think it's artificial cheering? Like, you're kind of led what to do.
Well, yes and no. I mean, not any more than it is in the U.S. where they have hands clapping on the scoreboard. No, this is more authentic than that. There are degrees of authenticity with the teams.
Yeah, when you're down by 10 runs in the 8th inning and 9th inning, and the fans are still putting out all the same amount of energy, you kind of start thinking maybe that energy is not necessarily as genuine as...
Well, it's a different thing.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing, is a lot of the organized cheering is about organized cheering. It's not about the result. It's about the connection between the players and the fans, and the team and the fans. And so that the score is not really the point. That's the that will change. That'll change the sort of the vibe. But the fact that they're cheering until the end is part of what they do. It's part of their compact with the team.
And it's also part of what is appealing, is that the fans do stay engaged, at least in something, throughout the entire game, rather than leaving after the 7th inning.
Is it also a cultural thing where Japanese people work very hard, have stressful lives, they're in the office, 80 hours a week, and this is, from what people tell me in Korea, this is like a release for them.
There's something to that, I think. I think the other thing is that the 80 hours or the overwork is it's a role. It's a role that people put on, and they don't actually do it. But going to the stadium gives them is an organized and authorized way to be crazy. We have these in Japan. Japan is big on festivals. Every shrine has it. Every shrine worth its salt. This is a good one. We'll have a festival where they'll be singing and dancing, and then people drinking themselves silly. Hanami parties. There's a variety of excuses in Japan. That's like Cinco de Mayo, and baseball's one of them. People can come out and get blasted, and everybody think, wow, what a great time we had at the ball game.
Yeah, it's a social event, basically. And so the organized cheering is part of a big social event and social group that one has. And of course, the various Oendan cheering groups, they're rivals, and yet they're all working together and in their own little social networking. So yeah, it's that's what a lot of it is about. Some people will say more so than the game itself.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they're tied to the team and its success, but it's not necessary. It's not, it's a win or lose thing. It's let's go to the game and enjoy it, which is the positive point. It occurred to me recently that one of the things that the teams do is market loyalty. I think I might have talked about this on a recent podcast. They market loyalty. And it's part of that compact with the fans that we're going to be behind your guy, the guy that you're cheering for. We're going to be behind him 100%. Now what this does, it makes it very, very hard to move players. Because as soon as you trade a player, you've instantly betrayed the fans. You haven't betrayed the player, you've betrayed the fans. And so, it makes it very difficult. I was talking with one team official and he said, yes, we have a guy in the minors, we'd like to give him a job and trade the guy who has the job in front of him for a star player, because this guy's not known, but he's as good a player, and the guy who is known, we could get a good player in return, but if we do that, the fans will kill us.
Do they have no trade clauses in their contract?
Well, players could have a no trade clause, but I don't think anybody does.
Right.
So a no trade clause in Japan seems almost redundant, doesn't it?
It's not necessary, because the odds of being traded, unless you really do something to upset the fans and upset the parent company of the team, unless you really do something really bad, it's very unlikely that you're going to be traded. Yes, there are some trades that happen, and they generally are really big surprises to everybody, player included. But, this is one of the aspects of Japanese baseball that I've always liked, is that I can get attached to a team and I know the players, and the next year I still know the players. I was outside of the U.S.
You would know the players if they came from any team in Japan or the U.S., you'd know who the players were.
Well, like, after I moved to Japan full-time, I went back to the States and I went to Candlestick Park, and I didn't recognize half the players on the field. And it just didn't seem like the Giants were my team anymore. Because a lot of the players that I really liked before I had come to Japan...
You hadn't gone back for 20 years.
Right. No, this was 2 years. This was just 2 years. And it seemed like the whole team had changed.
Yeah.
And that is just something that I feel gives me more of a connection to my team, Yokohama Bay Stars, than in the U.S.
That was not a plug.
Not a plug. I have no
not
affiliation with them.
Not yet, but willing to accept offers.
Yes, willing to accept offers.
So yeah, that's a big thing that people don't really think about. MLB, revolving door. Japan, no. Korea, not so much. You don't really hear of trades there either.
Well, the team, I know the Hawks this year are getting a lot of flack from their fans because basically instead of going out and signing new foreign players, which the fans think is the way to go, and pick those people off the vine and show how much smarter you are than everybody, they're basically poaching other teams' players this year. They've signed essentially 6 players that were with other NPB teams last year.
Lee Dae-ho, one of them.
Yeah, Lee Dae-ho and Kenichi Nakata from Chunichi Dragons, and Shinya Tsuruoka from the Fighters, and Dennis Sarfate from the Lions, and geez, I'm running out of steam.
There was another foreigner from Orix, I think.
No, he went to the Bay Stars. There were 4. Brian Wolf from Nippon Ham.
Okay.
And former Hawk Jason Standridge from the Tigers. So they got 6 players from other teams, and their fans are rebelling. You know, this is not what we do.
Interesting.
But for the Japanese guys, they have the Hawks have a very deep-seated strategy of developing baseball, of being Kyushu's team, which is an enormous market. I mean, Kyushu is probably roughly 12 or 13% of Japan's population.
Yeah. Tiny.
And capturing that behind one team, they're on television everywhere in Kyushu. They play games everywhere in Kyushu. The team is heavily Kyushu oriented.
Yeah, a lot of their draft picks are from Kyushu originally. A lot of the players that they're signing from other teams are going there originally from Kyushu, who were, you know, drafted by other teams earlier. So yeah, you can really see that the Hawks are geared toward appealing to the market in which they're at, much like Hokkaido is doing, or the Nippon Hemp Fighters are doing in Hokkaido.
If the Fighters depended on players from Hokkaido, they'd be in last place every year.
One thing, I want to talk about getting back to the loyalty in a second, but Lee Dae-ho going over to Fukuoka, is that strategic to try to maybe get some Koreans to come over from Busan? You've got that ferry right over there. You know, you got a lot of Koreans who can easily come over to the game for the day and head back.
It is true, and it's a short flight. You know, they have a lot of flights every day from Fukuoka. I believe they do. You could be. That would be a clever marketing move. I think that basically they looked and said, "Here's a guy who doesn't want to re-sign with Oryx, and we got money, and we're going to spend it."
And he's a very good player, so yeah, it's a very good deal all around.
Now, he's kind of a rarity because, you know, we've had so many big Korean stars in Japan, but if you look at the number of how many highly hyped hitters were successful in their first year here, the list is essentially Lee Dae-ho. Nobody else.
Getting back to the loyalty thing,
sure.
We're talking about with the fans getting really upset if players are traded and moved around in the league. Where in MLB, it's like, okay, no big deal. You know, you suck this year. Get out of here. What have you done for me lately? Type of mentality in the States. Where here, you're saying, from what I got, fans are more loyal. Is that indicative of Japanese culture, more loyalty, opposed to American culture, where it's, what have you done for me lately?
Perhaps, but I think it could change in a heartbeat. I think as soon as, here's, I guess the analogy is the introduction of free agency in Japan. It was, when it was introduced, and I'm going to say it was 1990, the winter of 94,
somewhere around.
Winter of 93 for the 94 season. One player filed for free agency. The next year it might have been 1 or 2, and the next year after that it might have been 2 or 3. Now it's 7 or 8 pretty much regularly, some years more. I think players thought that they would be outcasts
if they filed.
And the first guy who filed for free agency already was an outcast, Hiromitsu Ochiai.
Yeah, well, he was an outcast before he filed for free agency, so that wasn't...
He engineered his own blockbuster trade to get out of Lotte to go to the Central League. He was the first modern free agent. We have to stipulate that. There used to be a different form of free agency in Japan in the 60s. But what happened was, I think players felt they would be ostracized if they did it, that the fans wouldn't forgive them, that their former teammates wouldn't forgive them, and what they realized...
Their new teammates wouldn't accept them.
Well, that I wondered, but the thing is that what they realized is that what you realize when you work in a Japanese company is that people will tell you how many paid holidays they don't take, but if you take yours, or if you have you need special help and you have a sick family member or somebody died, you're grieving and you miss extra time at work, everybody is supportive of you. Don't follow the rules, be supportive. So we have this dichotomy between how Japan is supposed to be and how Japan really is, which is a lot more humane than the corporate kind of a stainless steel exterior. And the players realize that their former teammates will still be their former teammates. Those memories don't disappear. They'll get cheered when they come to their well, probably Ochai didn't get cheered a lot at Nagoya Stadium, but they'll get cheered when they come back, because players still remember what they did for them. The fans still remember. Their teammates will greet them, and it's, you know, they cut aside that veneer of where it's all about 100%. Japan's all about loyalty and nothing about what's best for you. But they realize their teammates understand.
And that's the whole wa thing too.
Sure.
You got to have wa, which was written in the late 80s, I believe.
The first one was written in I think in the mid 80s.
Mid 80s, and so free agency hadn't come up yet.
Correct.
And maybe, did he add a chapter after free agency?
Well, he had a whole new. He rewrote the entire book.
I haven't seen that one yet.
That was the meaning of Ichiro.
And that's
the meaning of Ichiro was kind of the follow-up to that.
By Robert Whiting, the original Godfather, the Don.
Bob is still the Godfather.
Okay,
baby.
Yeah.
But you guys are like, you know, the lieutenants, the capos,
The
capos, you know. And then underneath you've got your underbosses, Jason Costry and John Gibson.
Jason's my inspiration. Don't go with that. He's no underboss.
But he's
John's
great.
the host, and
Why do you mention that he's your inspiration?
Jason's very hardworking, and he's always moving in new directions. He's the first on a lot of things, and whereas I was here first. I mean, of all the people who are currently writing, except Bob and Wayne Grassick, who deserves a shout out. While I was here writing before a lot of people, I got into doing the things that I like to do, and I just kind of stuck at that. Whereas Jason came at a sort of a different age, a more electronically savvy, and was, you know, getting into Twitter a lot more and getting out and using the media a lot more to take advantage of his situation. I really was saying I wish they had Twitter back in the 90s. You know, I might have sold more than, you know, 1,000 books in 4 years.
Well, I tell you, I wouldn't retweet anything until you guys said that Tanaka was going to get posted on Christmas Day.
Well, that wasn't my doing. I was aware of what Kyoto was reporting.
Okay.
I didn't have any sources. It was the Kyoto source. I just don't want to say it was.
Okay.
But they deserve the credit.
All right.
Because they got a guy in Sendai basically sending flashes, and I was waiting to write a story that day.
Okay. So you had a guy up there.
Oh, sure.
Okay. Well, but it's still, I don't swear by anything until you and Jason mention it. Then it becomes real for me. It becomes a reality.
Well, okay. Jason's pretty careful. He covers a lot of wide stuff. I'm probably more careful because I work for Kyoto, and Kyoto tends to be on the stodgy side. We very rarely report rumors unless the guy tells us himself. So when Kyoto writes it, it's because the team official actually said it.
This year has been probably one of the most memorable years, and I've only been following Japanese baseball closely for a couple years and loosely for 10 years, but you had unbelievable things happening this year. The home run record broken by Coco Ballantine, Tanaka going 24-0, hadn't lost a start since last August. Is this, for you guys the dinosaurs here now, the most memorable year in Japanese baseball history? Jim, we'll start with you first.
Well, that's impossible to ask because I don't remember a lot of years in Japanese baseball history.
For you, since you started covering.
Well, since I think the most memorable season in Japanese baseball history was 1975, but that's a plug. The
Carp won it that year.
The Carp won it that year, and
helped rebuild that city.
It was 30 years after the atomic bomb, and it was a dead heat. Three teams into the final month of the season. It was a dead heat down to the final 2 days. The Carp won their first pennant, and the Hankyu Braves won their first Japan series. That was probably the best, but there are a number of other candidates. But as far as individual accomplishments and great finishes, this is unbeatable. This is hard to match a home run record in one league and a pitching record in another league. And the first time the expansion franchise dethroning Japan's first franchise in the Japan series. Yeah, it doesn't get much better than that.
Yankees of Japan.
Absolutely, being beaten by the Bad News Bears.
And Rakuten helping to rebuild that area as well.
Sure.
What will stick out in your mind about Valentin's run and Tanaka's record this year? What are the defining moments? We'll start with you, Jim, and then I want to get your impression too of this.
The defining moments for Valentin was being at the park when he hit number 56 and hearing the Tigers fans going nuts about it and cheering him was something that I found very
confusing.
Confusing indeed. It was almost like it was like the invasion of the body snatchers. These can't be Tigers fans. Well, to be honest, they were all cheering. But that was one. And
now, if he was a Giant, would they be cheering?
That's another question. I don't know. But as far as Tanaka, I think it was the postseason and losing the game, finally losing a game. Pitched it, I think it was a 1-0 loss, and losing that game and then bouncing back, and the Eagles bouncing back and just going back to business and saying, okay, we lost this game. Everybody, including John Gibson, says we're out of this series now that Tanaka's shot his bolt, but. They came back and bounced back. So I would say the Eagles, I think, are the more memorable in the Pacific League. Not Eagles, and with the Eagles featuring Masahiro Tanaka.
Michael?
For me, I'd like to go back a little bit earlier in the season to when Alex Ramirez hit his 2000th hit here in Japan, and it was a home run at the very same Jingu Kyujo as Valentin. Yeah, just about the same place too as Valentin hit his home run. And again there, he was a base star, but the entire stadium stood up and gave him a standing ovation. And this happens repeatedly in Japan. The home team, yes, they're cheering for their team, but they are also cheering for individuals who do something, record-breaking, record-setting the first time. The fans are fans of baseball as much as they are fans for their team. And so, yes, the Tigers cheering for Valentin's home run. It's surprising given what we kind of understand as being Hanshin fandom, but at the same time it's not surprising because so many fans do this even when the opposition does something groundbreaking. And it's repeated. And as for, what year is the most memorable? The most memorable season is always the season that just ended.
Sure.
Well put. Yeah, it's because, as Michael said, when we get older, one of the things that goes is the memory. Yeah. So the most memorable season is the question you just asked me. What was it? I would add that with the Ramirez, there was, of course, the asterisk that he played 7 years and was a very popular player for the Swallows.
He was with the Swallows, so a lot of the Swallows fans were still Ramirez fans. Oh, yeah. They still were dedicated to him, no matter, even though he went to the enemy, the Giants, just down the tracks, or came to Yokohama. The fans still cheered Ramirez no matter where he was, and he is just such a great guy. Is he joining the Lions next year? I've heard talk of it.
No, that was talk. And right now I have not heard anything.
Is he playing winter ball?
No, he's taking care of business here in Tokyo.
Okay. Okay.
But I'm still hoping that he does get a contract with a Pacific League team, because he can still DH, and he is just such a great guy.
He's got the restaurant, that's right.
He has the Rami-chan Cafe in Aoyama, which is it's not as hard to get to as it seems. And food's great. His wife runs it, and if you go there, you can definitely see Rami-chan because he's there a lot.
Were you at the 2009 WBC in LA?
I was.
Semifinals, USA, Japan. Were you sitting in left field?
Nope.
Okay.
I was sitting. I was not reporting because ESPN cut all their freelancers, and Yomiuri wasn't paying anybody to go anywhere, and so I was there, and I was sitting. USA game, I was sitting on the first base and probably the second deck.
Okay, I thought I saw you in left
and
field.
Some friends. Well,
wasn't you?
Well, I have a few doubles, but
well, this
we
guy
don't
was
talk about him.
Dressed in a long Japanese robe.
That wasn't me.
Okay, wasn't you?
I was wearing a Japan team shirt and a Nippon Ham Fighters cap.
Okay, I've seen that picture of you.
Yeah, that's
somewhere
on my Twitter feed.
Yep.
Until I replaced it with Santa Claus the other day.
Okay. Well, you guys have mentioned you've seen a lot. You've been here since the early 90s, and Michael, I think you've been here almost just as long. Jim, do you have one war story that stands out, an interview, an incident that you covered? By the way, I really love the fact that you and John get out there and interview players in English every podcast. It really brings the sport more to life and personable for me.
Well, I have to say about the podcast, that's really John's baby. John and Michael do more work on the podcast than I do.
Michael, you upload it,
I
right?
upload
and you do your technical side.
Yeah.
Engineers it, right?
Yeah.
Do you edit?
No, I don't edit. That's all John's work.
All John's.
Okay.
Michael and I did a podcast once, although it took several cuts and several effort. But
yeah, the sound wasn't quite right. We needed to go over it one time to practice, and so the sound quality wasn't quite there. There were some issues.
So, but basically, John does. He does about 80% of the work on that. It's sort of like it's John Gibson's Japan Baseball Weekly podcast with the weekly. I'm the weekly guest star.
The Tonight Show with Johnny Gibson.
I was the
Ed McMahon.
Ed McMahon. I'm Ed McMahon.
Well, John, thank you for doing that. We do sometimes not. You're like my big brother that beats me up all the time, but I still love you, and thank you for the podcast.
The big brother, stay away, stay out of reach, baby.
Wish you could be here today. So, a war story.
A war story, gosh. A war story, too many. I guess the best is a Kazuhiro Sasaki. I guess is the essence of Japanese baseball was Kazuhiro Sasaki. This is the 1998. He was the MVP of the Central League, and he was the big star. 1999, he's hurt. Basically, they just worked him what was left of his arm to death, and he was hurt early in the 1999 season, and he came back just for the All-Star game. And had to pitch in the All-Star games because, and I asked him before that, I says, is it in your best interest to pitch? Is it the best? No, but people ask me, I'm going to go. Because he's kind of one of these tough guys. And besides in the future, my future as a television personality, I won't need my arm. He didn't say that. You might have been thinking.
Or managing.
Well, she's multi-talented. Okay, so anyway, towards the end of that season, he's in Yokosuka at the farm facility, practicing, and they're going to bring him up for one last game at the end of the season. And is he up for it? No, I'm still waiting. My arm's not quite right yet, and it wasn't quite right. but rest over the winter.
He's a big guy, by the way.
He is a big guy. We're about the same size.
Yeah.
So anyway, after his practice, the reporters all went out to his car, and this is September, and he says, I said, you know, a lot of people in the States think you're one of the best pitchers in Japan, and you'd be one of the most marketable pitchers in the major leagues as a free agent next year. And he said, well, I have not given going to America any thought. I really can't be concerned about what people think about me. I says, well, you're going to be a free agent. You haven't considered whether or not you're going to become a free agent. He says, no, my arm is my only concern right now. Finishing this season strong for the Bay Stars is the only thing I'm interested. Major leagues, I have not given it a thought. Okay, I went to America.
And you spoke in Japanese to him?
This was in Japanese.
Without a translator?
Yeah, this was in Japanese. Okay. This was a group of reporters.
How was his attitude? Matter of fact, or was he a little taken back by this?
No, he was just, I would say he was dismissal. He was dismissive. Okay, I go to America the next day. I come back, I get a stack of newspapers. The next day's paper, I'm not going to the majors. I'm not going to be a free agent. I'm not going to talk about it. 2 days later, I'm declaring for free agency. 3 days later, I'm going to the majors. I already know where I want to go.
Wow.
So it went from, I have no idea.
Well, you lit a spark under, maybe a little... You lit a little spark there?
I don't think yeah, but that was just
that's the standard feed that you give to the press in order to, you know, show solidarity with the team and the fans. And you can't talk about what your future is going to be until after the season is over. Once the season is over, you can start saying, yes, I want to go. And so it's just, you know, he was just basically giving you the standard.
Sure. I mean, I have better stories than that, but that's the one that comes to mind. I mean, I've had, I guess the better one of people lying is Hiromitsu Ochiai as a manager, basically telling everybody tomorrow's pitcher is going to be Kenshin Kawakami, and then pulling Daisuke Yamai? Is it Daisuke? Yeah. Daisuke Yamai out of his pocket and saying, no, I always planned for Yamai. I was just telling you a lie yesterday.
What's your proudest moment as a journalist here?
Wow. I guess I'm proud of the fact that no baseball players have attacked me with a bat yet. Although I think Daisuke Motoki wanted to a couple of times.
Well, that's a humbled answer.
He also wanted to, he tried to get one of his teammates to throw a baseball at me. He didn't like, he was holding a grudge about the one time when the Giants, he had just earned his spot as the Giants' regular third baseman about 1998, and in 2000 the Giants signed Akira Eto from the Hiroshima Carp as a free agent, and I said, well, what are you going to do this season? Now they signed Eto, what's your plan? He said, what do you mean by that? And after that he just smirked at me and tried to get to one of his teammates while they were playing catch. He was playing catch next to me, and he's trying to get one of his teammates to.
You saw it?
Yeah, I could see it.
Okay.
Going, I don't remember who the teammate. It might have been Kiyohara. They were tight. And even Kiyohara wouldn't throw a baseball at me, so I forget some of the bad things I've said about him in the last 10 minutes.
Michael, you have a war story or something that sticks out? Something from the last couple of decades you've been here.
My main battles have mainly been against the North American press and their complete lack of understanding and lack of knowledge and lack of ability to fact check anything here in Japan.
Like Naka has thrown in the bullpen or come in and relief several times this season?
Yeah, on numerous occasions in his career, he's come out on 1 day or no days rest after a start to pitch out of the bullpen.
Yeah, that was a bit odd. Oh yeah, he did that in the Japan series and never. But it goes back a lot longer. When Ichiro first went to the U.S., a reporter wrote that Ogi Kantoku, the manager of Orix when Ichiro came up, was responsible for keeping him at on the farm team for many years, despite how well he was doing. And that was just plain false. It was the previous manager. Who was it?
It was Doi.
Doi. Yes, Doi.
His first name escapes me.
Doi Kantoku, who was the instigator, who was the person who for some reason just despised Ichiro's natural talent and didn't feel that he worked hard enough to get to the top team. And it was when Ogi took over as manager that the first thing he did was promote Ichiro, and Ichiro broke the 200 hit barrier in Japan that same year. Ogi was the person who was responsible for Ichiro's breakout, and this person, despite me pointing out that he was wrong, and he basically attacked Ogi throughout this article. I pointed him to references in Japanese because there are only references in Japanese at the time, but I translated them for him completely, asked him to go ahead and check with other Japanese that this is correct. He absolutely refused to write a retraction. He said, "I am a real reporter. You don't know what you're talking about. You're just some guy on the internet."
Was this from The Onion?
No, he wrote for some northeastern newspaper in the U.S. And just before the first WBC, I was interviewed to talk about the Japanese team, and I said, yeah, there's, Japan has got a lot of really great pitchers, and yeah, I think we have a chance of doing really well. And the guys, and I mentioned Shunsuke
Watanabe?
Yeah, Shunsuke Watanabe, who's a submariner, and says, major leaguers may not have seen very many submarine pitches. He might not be effective. And the American reporter, he just scoffed and said, "You think he's going to be able to strike out Jeter?" And so my reply was, "Who's Jeter?" just to jeer him. But my comment in the article that was eventually published was, "Oh yeah, and there's this weird guy who thinks Japan actually has a chance of winning." at the very end of the article, that's what he wrote. And then
this was before 09.
This was the first WBC.
06.
And who won that WBC, may I ask? So,
despite its manager, and I love Sadaharu, but boy, don't put him near any big games.
Well, he can get away with whatever he wants, right?
Well, I guess thinking back about that, I think I'll go back to the major leagues, the major league Japan. I'd add that with Akira Ogi, it wasn't just Ichiro. The first two big Japanese major league stars both got their pro starts under Akira Ogi. Hideo Nomo was a guy that a lot of Japanese teams were saying, well, if we draft you, we're going to change your motion. Ogi drafted him and won him in the draft lottery and said, no, you just keep doing what you're doing. Ichiro, the same thing. He hit 3 350 as an 18-year-old in a very tough hitters league in the Western League in the minors. And then he hit 385 the next year. And he hit his first pro home run off of Nomo in 1993.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he did it in Nagano. And his manager, Doi, sent him back to the farm team because you're not a home run hitter. Stop thinking that you're a good hitter because you can't hit the way you're hitting. So,
and he's actually received a lot of criticism for not trying to hit home runs.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
That is fair enough.
I wonder if it stems back to that.
Oh, I doubt that because he nearly won a home run title, and he almost won a Triple Crown.
Yeah, the year after he hit 200 home run or 200 hits, he then decided to change and be a power hitter.
Yeah.
His batting average suffered a little bit because of it, but he did show that he could hit for power as well.
Yeah, he finished one short on the home run crown. So I think he won the RBI and the batting average. They had 7 straight batting championships in Japan. I guess the stories about Japanese players and major leagues. The first one is Mike Hargrove on Ichiro when Mike Hargrove was managing the Nichibei Yaku. He was managing the American All-Star Touring Team to Japan.
Okay.
On a series in which Ichiro was the big star. He said,
Was that with Griffey playing on that?
Could have been. He said this guy's got a future this guy could definitely play in the major leagues. I think a lot of teams could use him as a 4th outfielder.
A 4th outfielder.
Needless to say, okay, that was one. When Ichiro was posted, the Major League All-Stars were playing. The day Ichiro was posted, the Major League All-Stars were playing in Kyushu. And the story was, what are the Seattle Mariners thinking paying, I think they paid $17 million or $13 million for the negotiating fee to a guy who's never played in the major leagues. Nobody knows who this guy is. What a joke. He doesn't deserve it. He's not a real major leaguer. They were going nuts that any team would pay money for a player who'd never played in the big leagues. And, okay, now move that to that. In fact, that same year, Ichiro did not play in that series because he had a broken arm. He got hit by a pitch at the end of the season. And I think Kazuo Matsui was the star of that series. And he made a catch in the outfield where he never played. People asked him if he had won any gold gloves in the outfield. Anyway, the Japanese team was this is the Barry Bonds, he used to come here regularly because he had a lot of endorsements here in Japan. And somebody asked him after the last game if he thought the Japanese all-star team could be competitive in the major leagues. The best players in Japan, could they be competitive in the NL West? And he said, "Are you kidding?" He said, "No, get out of here. It's a joke." And I asked him if he still thought that the year after Ichiro was the MVP of the American League in his first year. And the year after that, they're on the team, and he said, "I would never, ever say anything like that."
Selective memory.
Yeah.
Well, he's got another one about. He's got several of those. Thanks to my buddy John Shea at the Chronicle.
Is Japanese baseball fans wanting that series to reconvene? Or at least have, I noticed like the MLB teams aren't coming over here anymore to begin the season. Like they're going to go to Australia this year, Sydney. You'll have Dodgers and Diamondbacks. And for many years, you had teams opening up their season here.
Well, we're going to see that. I think it's probably going to be every 4 years. We'll see a team.
Every 4 years.
There is still a big demand for the major league teams coming to Japan. There is not enough demand for Major League All-Star teams coming to Japan because the Japanese teams get the Major League opening games here.
Right.
They get to see real games, and every day they get to watch Japanese players play in the majors on TV. So
they get their fill.
They get their fill. But I think, no, they're trying to get the sponsors want to have. There are sponsors, especially Yomiuri, still wants to bring the all-star teams here to play against Japanese all-stars, but the players union is not playing ball right now. The players union is the largest difficulty. The Japanese players union is like a zombie. It's like dangerous, but it doesn't have any direction. It's moving, so we know it's still there, but we're not exactly certain what it's up to, and doubt that it has any goals or any.
Well, they've got goals. They've been trying to get a lot of reform done with NPB since their successful 2004 strike, but the owners just won't listen to them. The owners don't even respond to their questions. So, yes, they've got a union. They've expressed their grievances. They've proposed different things to the owners, but the owners feel that the players' union just doesn't have enough clout or enough anything to even bother an answer to a lot of these things, which I kind of feel bad for the players.
I do, but I also think that, like a lot of the issues the players' union are taking up are, well, basically the players' union in Japan has attacked the issues of what can we win, and unfortunately, and the courts in Japan are very, very favorable to big business. And, for example, the players do not own their image rights. The teams own their image rights. And they had a court case, and the players lost, and the NPB's argument was, we've done such a good job marketing your rights so far, why do you want to change?
So players can't do individual endorsements here?
Well, no, of course they can, but the team gets a share.
Oh. Where in MLB they do not get a share.
Well, I think MLB gets a.
If they're wearing
the uniform, right?
Yeah. Here it's another.
Like
issue.
in Korea, Ryu has come back for the winter. He's done a lot of endorsements, and he'll wear like a 99 on his hat instead of the Dodgers logo.
If he has a MLB stuff, which then MLB, then my buddy Jim Small's organization's cashing in.
It's funny you guys say that the players union is weak here, because some people have said, wow, they seem pretty strong. They got their way with the posting.
Nah. All they did is all they did is agree to what. No, the players union dithered on the first posting. People said it was the owners.
The top three. It was
the top two. Split the top two.
Yeah.
The owners apparently took their time, but it's hard always to distinguish what's going on with NPB, because the connection with the discussion between NPB doesn't really want to talk to the union. They hesitate and they hesitate and they hesitate and they don't get things done. And then the 2006 WBC was, the players didn't know that NPB didn't even know it had signed on. They thought they had signed on for the purpose of signing on in the future. There was a massive miscommunication with the players, and they didn't tell the players about it. And so when they asked the players, well, we heard about this yesterday, you want us to vote today? So NPB has a phobia to deal with the players.
Are you guys surprised that this first test case of the posting, Tanaka was posted, and that did you think it was going to look like, basically it was going to look bad? The posting wasn't going to go through because it was only $20 million, and this whole new posting agreement would blow up.
Well, I thought that Japan had the better hand in any negotiations because the major league teams really wanted Tanaka. Right. And that the Japanese didn't even bother negotiating, as far as I could tell, really surprised me. And all these really weird stories coming out of North America, like the Japanese teams all want to get rid of Tanaka, want Tanaka out so they don't have to bat against him. That's nonsense.
Yeah.
Wow. No, I was surprised that they couldn't be. No, basically NPB took whatever MLB and said thank you very much. If they had said, here we want you to swallow this stuff. It tastes horrible, but it'll be good for you. Oh, thank you. Let's try that. Well, first of all, NPB is largely pushed around to a great degree by the one team that will never post a player, the Yomiuri Giants.
Right.
Okay. Now, so that's the only reason why it would make sense at all. But another thing is it's basically a few teams that look to benefit. In general, the new system is good for 95% of the players. It's bad. It's still bad for 95% of the teams because it cuts that extra layer of fat out of the bargaining. In the sense that, not that I don't think MLB teams were ever overpaying. You know, they were paying market fees for these players. They were paying what they considered it was a fair market. But when you know what the other side will accept, you no longer have to pay more than the necessary amount,
right? Which
is an element of the regular market. So
who wins? Who won in the posting, in your opinion?
The players. I think the players won, and the small market major league teams, because they got two things. One, they got a massive amount of money that is now luxury taxed, or they get the best Japanese talent that they cannot afford staying in Japan. So for them it works, it cuts both either way. The guys stay in Japan because of the tax on the teams, or they get, well, and that's going to happen because if this position stays in place, Japanese teams are going to come up with ways to get around this, which was the surprise to me that the Eagles didn't figure a more creative way out of this solution in 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, it came down to them seeing that he really wanted to go.
Yeah.
At least that's what they said.
Well, they could have. There's a number of things they could have done, but it was such a short time. I think I would be surprised, but not knocked back if within, after March 1st, if NPB didn't say, well, this posting system isn't doing any good for us, we're going to end it, because they have 100. They've got basically until it was agreed in December. They've got basically until November, October, September. They've got until the beginning of September to decide whether they want to cancel it. They can
the agreement.
Yeah, 180 days before.
Three years.
I thought it was a 3
No,
year.
The current agreement is going to go for 3 years, but it can be thrown out by either side.
Oh, really?
180 days prior to the anniversary.
Oh, so like 2 years and change from now.
Well, I think from September. I think by September, if NPB says we don't want this agreement anymore, they can just throw it out the window, and there won't be any posting agreement then.
So 6 months from the time it expires, they can throw it out.
Well, since Tanaka's the only guy who's likely to go this year, it's probably this may be the only case it's ever used.
Wow. Okay, that's
in which case
something that a lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
So
unless I may be misreading the rule, but it said either side can back out of the agreement on the 180 days prior to the anniversary, which would be every year, not necessarily the third anniversary. I don't think.
Interesting.
So
it's an out clause.
Yeah, well, I mean, they both have but if they want to keep a posting system, they can't replace it with another one.
Both of you guys, what ways have you seen the coverage of Japanese baseball change, from a foreigner standpoint and both in Japan? We talked about Twitter before.
Sure.
Okay, that's become huge. But what other things could you think of that have changed in terms of coverage since you guys both landed here?
Well, in Japan, I guess the new media, cable and the internet, has wiped Japanese baseball off of
no
terrestrial.
Commercials, I might add. I watch these games from here, Japanese games. I don't see any commercials. They keep it rolling right throughout the middle of the innings.
You watch NHK.
You watch NHK.
Is it NHK?
NHK
Okay.
That's the national broadcaster doesn't have any commercials.
Yeah.
Except for their own.
Why?
Yeah.
Well, it's
public.
Yeah, it's public broadcasting without the sponsorship drives.
So it's state-run television?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, wow.
It's so much more
Korean, North Korean.
Right. We should be.
I live in Korea, so pardon me.
Standing in front of a statue or something. But the
NHK is a great thing. I really like NHK. It doesn't sound like state-run television.
Well,
it sounds.
It's state-funded.
State-funded, yeah.
But they have. But yes, the new media has wiped Japanese baseball off of terrestrial TV for the most part. Used to be every Giants game was on TV, and there used to be other games on TV. You used to be able to, back in the 80s, you could turn on the TV in the evening, and if you were in Okayama, they might have a Kintetsu Buffaloes Seibu Lions game on TV.
Kanagawa TV had Yokohama.
They don't anymore.
I haven't looked long time because I have cable where they play the entire game instead of just from the 3rd to 8th inning, which was another big complaint about terrestrial TV fans. So once cable is taken over, the whole need for terrestrial broadcasts has basically been eliminated.
Well, some teams have I know the SoftBank Hawks are doing a great job with keeping their team on terrestrial TV everywhere they can. In most of the major markets, there's a channel that will show the Hawks home games. So whether you're in Kansai or Tokyo or in Kyushu, of course, everybody has got all the Hawks home games on TV because they charge. When the Hawks went to Fukuoka, they were essentially newcomers and they were not really wanted. They were an Osaka team, and the fans, they would get more fans in 1990, they'd get more fans to see the former Fukuoka team, who hadn't been there for 12 years, come and play the new Fukuoka team. And so they caught on a wonderful idea, which is if we offer our broadcasts for, I think they were charging $100 or $1,000, maybe $100 a broadcast anywhere on terrestrial TV. They got Kyushu? Their games, well, they were blanketing Kyushu where there was a demand. And everybody was showing Hawks games. And what happened was, and the Hawks also had another campaign, which was giving away the unsold tickets. If they had a blocks of unsold tickets, they'd give them to schools.
At the Dome?
At the Yahoo Dome. And what happens now is there aren't unsold tickets. There aren't big blocks of unsold tickets because of that massive television presence showing the stadium full. The stadium is now almost always full. They've done a wonderful job of marketing the team. The fighters have done a wonderful job of marketing their team, and so those things, good things, are happening. And with the exception of the earthquake, which had a kind of a delayed effect on attendance, Japanese attendance, despite the economy going the opposite direction, Japanese attendance has gradually been increasing year to year.
And what does it cost to get into the ballpark here?
3,000 yen through, 1,000 for standing only seats.
About $10 US.
Yeah.
3,000 yen for outfield seats in a lot of the parks, not necessarily all of them. And upwards to 13,000 for field seats at a lot of the stadiums. 10,000 for picnic seats. And a lot of times that's split between 3 or 4 people. The prices are still fairly reasonable. 10,000 yen translates to $100, but that's really not much money here in Japan. So you can't really look at it in terms of dollars, but for the domestic entertainment budget, it's really a good deal. Baseball games are.
Yeah, the food is not as overpriced as it is in the U.S.
$10, $12 for a beer.
Nobody's going to balk if you bring in a box lunch or something.
That's like in Korea too. You could bring everything in but soju.
You can.
They don't want soju. They want to sell soju in the stadium.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
What a shame.
At Tokyo Dome, I usually stop by Subway sandwiches and bring that in.
Sure. So there's that. The other thing is, I think the other dynamic of Japanese baseball, or part of the business dynamic, is that there are the number of teams who own their own stadium is, by my count, 3. Which is the Hanshin Tigers, the Seibu Lions, God love them, and the Hawks now have bought back their stadium. Yeah. So basically, then the Bay Stars and the Marines. The Bay Stars have, and I don't know if the Marines still have the operating license and operating rights. So they basically paid a large sum of money for the stadium, and they get to keep all the revenues. But most of these teams pay a chunk of every ticket sold to whatever city organization or whatever company owns their stadium. Even the Giants don't own their stadium.
In Korea, the governments own the stadium.
Okay.
The cities. Yeah.
Well, the fight.
In Yokohama, it is the municipality that owns the stadium.
But the Bay Stars have an operating license, so they get to keep the concessions.
But I believe that the city gets billboard revenues and things like that.
Oh, could be.
Although Yokohama has now put on the ribbon around the outfield, and the Bay Stars get revenue from that, and some of the other initiatives that they've been doing. So it's gradually getting better than it was a few years ago, but it's still not quite anything like what the major league teams get.
Sure. No, there's no free stadium deals in Japan. There's no tax breaks. There's no nothing. So the Japanese teams are really handicapped in that, in dealing with contracts, because most of them are looking at rent. They're looking at rent in millions of dollars a year. The rent is outrageous. It would certainly. I think if the teams had the cash and the capital available to them, it would behoove all of them to leave their stadiums and build new ones, because they probably could build a stadium with the rent they pay in 5 or 6 years.
Actually, I was wondering what happens with the third-party stadiums. Are the teams paid to go there? Do they get revenue? Do you know?
It's probably independent contracts between the host team and the.
That's just something I've been curious about.
Yeah, I don't know. I can, we can ask people about that. I don't know.
Well, Jim's got to go back to work soon. About 15 minutes.
Back to work. I got to
start work. Going to Kyoto.
Walk all the way over there.
So one last thing before we go. Living in Korea, in terms of baseball and national baseball, there's nothing more that they want than to beat Japan.
Oh, yeah.
Could you talk about that rivalry a little bit? And do the Japanese care as much about beating Korea? Where, historically, Japan occupied Korea. The war ended and Korea was set free pretty much from occupation. There are some people in Korea that are still angry about that and don't think the score will ever be settled until they beat Japan in a war.
Yeah.
And the war is now baseball.
Fancy that. No, I think Japan pretty much doesn't see. Although I think thanks to the WBC, I think Japan sees and the international games in other sports, soccer and baseball and volleyball. Japan-Korea is that's a pretty tough rivalry and really a good one. And it's something that, to be honest, what they really need is every year to have Japan-Korea play with all their major leaguers, and go at it, couple of games.
Well, you have the Asia series, but I don't think they met this year.
No, that's nothing. That's clubs. You want the national teams, Japan and Korea.
Yeah. There's a chance next year at the Asia Games.
No, because the major leaguers won't come.
All
Not
right.
for no. They want to see the full thing. They want
Maybe
to see
the Olympics in 2020.
No,
Again, we'll have
no
MLB
major
guys.
leaguers.
Yeah.
No, never happened. So I can't. You never say never, but
So the WBC is
the WBC is the best,
Yeah.
and but yeah, the way as heated as Japan Korea games are in soccer, it's the best. It's the best rivalry there is. As far as does Japan care? Not until the game starts.
Right.
Once the game starts, it's game on. But until that, it's like, Korea, they really love us.
Yeah, I think most of the young people don't really know or care much about
Young Japanese people.
Yeah, Japanese don't really see Korea as a former rival or anybody to be despised or anything. A lot of Japanese are getting into K-pop and Korean series, television series are being broadcast in Japan. I know a lot of housewives watch the Korean series and Son-san and so a lot of Korean culture is coming to Japan. A lot of Japanese are certainly receptive of Korean culture.
Much of the teams are essentially owned by Koreans.
Yeah, Lotte.
And I won't go into too many other details.
Okay.
So that kind of despising rivalry, I think Japan has gone beyond that. The heat just isn't there as much anymore.
You can't talk about the politicians, though.
Politics is a different area, but and even in politics, it mostly looks like Korea is trying to goad Japan into something, as China is right now as well. But I don't know. Japan just seems to have graduated from that kind of sentiment. It's no longer something that they see as certainly beneficial. Holding hatred is something that is not beneficial in the long run, and it will eventually dissipate.
Japanese seem to think they can't really understand why they don't. They look down on people, but they can't understand why the people they look down on would possibly despise them. It's kind of odd. I mean, they're not making choices to look down. It's part of that is part. Unfortunately, it's a remnant of the old culture that's still around. That Korean is this and Korean is that. Southeast Asians are this and that, and there's stereotypes that unfortunately live on. But as far as when people make conscious decisions, that goes out the window. Unless you're a politician, in which you have to pander to special interests. But baseball doesn't particularly have that. I think the relationships between the organizations are very good. I think the relationships for the players were good. 2006 was a watershed. 2006 when Ichiro and Park Chan-ho were going at it.
Is that when Ichiro made the comments about Doctor?
No, I can't recall.
Yeah.
Yeah, he made a lot of comments that he had beer thrown on him by Korean fans.
Yeah.
And that,
definitely fired up the Korean
But the
team.
2009 at Dodger Stadium, the final, the atmosphere was intense for the game. But it was among the fans, the Japanese and Korean fans, there was essentially the only animosity was they're cheering louder than us, we better pick up the game. It was very positive, very friendly.
So that slide into second.
It was more of a friendly rivalry than a let's go over and start beating some people up rivalry.
Yeah, 2006 Tokyo Dome, the Koreans planting the Korean flag on the mound at Tokyo Dome.
Yeah.
Of course, what a great game. Busloads of Korean fans. To me, that was the games that Japan, oddly enough, of course, Korea beat Japan twice. and only lost to him the one time
one
that counted in the semifinal.
So when are you guys going to work on a book on the Japan-Korea rivalry?
Wow. We'll have to get somebody who knows a lot about Korea.
Patrick Borgo.
Yeah, I heard of that.
Yeah. So guys,
introduce me.
Oh yeah, are you Sabre member?
I've lapsed.
Okay, well,
I met Patrick a few months ago. Yeah, he's a really great guy, and he's really into digging up a lot of Korean baseball history. He's basically an historian, and I think that his work with the Korea Sabre and getting that whole thing started is going to be a real watershed of information coming out of Korea on baseball over there. And yeah, I look forward to seeing what the Sabre committee in Korea is putting out.
Well, we'd love to have you guys over there. We just started the group. Patrick started the group along with Thomas St. John. And Thomas St. John.
Thomas St. John's still kicking.
Yeah, you know Thomas.
It's good
from ages ago.
Back. He's like a phoenix. He's revived himself.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds painful. You got to go through the whole fire thing.
Yeah.
Well, a few years back, it just sounded like he was so
deflated.
Yeah.
I missed the deflation scene. He was
Where did you learn about this? With Thomas? Was this online?
Yeah, Thomas online, and Thomas coming to Japan now and then. And used to come for the Major League Baseball tours here, I think. And, we were bumped into each other a few times, and then he just vanished.
Yeah, I'm just glad to see that he's regained his enthusiasm for it, and because back 6 years ago, he was the person to go to for a lot of data and such. So yeah, it's really good to see that he's regained his enthusiasm for Korean baseball.
Well, I hope I got him back into it, because last year I interviewed him for my documentary, and I'll put out the whole interview on a podcast sooner or later, and you'll get to hear his whole story.
Yeah, I'd really like to hear that.
Jim's got to go to work. Jim, how do the fans get in touch with you?
With my email, which is guidedogjapan@yahoo.com. I guess spelled the way it sounds.
And Twitter?
And Twitter at jballallen. And that's the best.
And listen to his podcast,
Japan Baseball Weekly Podcast, starring John Gibson with Ed McMahon, me.
And you can find that on iTunes and...
also at thejapanesebaseball.com.
And right here, the creator of
Japanesebaseball.com.
Japanesebaseball.com. Michael Westbay, how do the fans get in touch with you?
Email is westbaystars@japanesebaseball.com, also at gmail.com. And I also post a lot to the Google Plus Pro Yaku community. And of course, I have a blog on japanesebaseball.com. I run the site as well, so you can find me all over in those places. I'm not a Twitter person yet, but I'm starting to think that I need to get on that bandwagon as well.
Come on.
I tend to prefer long form is the thing, over short form. So it's just one of those things that it's going to have to take a change of thinking, and I can see the benefit to it.
Well, Twitter, the nice thing about Twitter is you can be sharp, and you can avoid. You can get news out without having an opinion, which is valuable when you work for a news agency that doesn't value your opinion.
You have to be short and sharp.
Well, your opinions are not really welcome.
Yeah.
So I'd love to have blogged about Masahiro Tanaka and the posting system, but that's not what they really want to hear, is having somebody from a government-subsidized organization saying what a lousy job they're doing.
Well, you know you've got a writer's page on JapaneseBaseball.com.
Well,
you can
that's
always
the problem.
put it there.
I can't. That's the problem. I'm not really allowed. I probably shouldn't. I have thought about it. Okay,
We could probably go on for hours here, guys.
We could and we
Listen,
will, but
don't try what these guys try at home in terms of sabermetrics and baseball knowledge. You won't match them. They're the godfathers, or at least the current godfathers of Japanese baseball and English in Japan. Thank you, Jim Allen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael Westbay.
Thank you for your time.
From
Thank you for having
Tokyo,
us on.
right? You're welcome. Anytime. Outside of Shimbashi Stadium, there's some station.
No,
What did I say?
there's no stadium here.
Shimbashi Station. This is why we better get out of here. Okay, thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Matane. Okay, thanks,
Very
guys.
good.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. It
Thanks
was a
lot.
pleasure.
Yeah.
Wow.
We could have probably stayed out here all day.
Well, yeah, well, it's warming up. So